Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today we are going to learn about the functional anatomy of pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is the master gland of the body which controls the development of the body, homeostasis in the body, and metabolism inside the body. First of all, coming towards the location of pituitary gland. So the location of pituitary gland can be deduced from its name. Pituitary gland is also called hypophysis. I'm going to write it. Already written. Hypo mean below, and physis mean to grow. So the endocrine gland which grow below the brain is called hypophysis or pituitary gland. Now coming towards the exact location of hypophysis. In this slide we can see that the pituitary gland is located below the brain. This represent an outgrowth at the floor of the brain or at the roof of the brain. You can see the location of the pituitary gland is inside the sphenoid bone. This part of the sphenoid bone where the pituitary gland is located is called sella turcica, and the cavity inside this sella turcica is called hypophyseal fossa. So you can say that the pituitary gland is present inside the hypophyseal fossa of the sella turcica of the sphenoid bone. Once again, the pituitary gland is located inside the hypophyseal fossa of the sella turcica of the sphenoid bone. Now coming towards the first slide. This is the first slide. In this slide, we can see the structure of pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is composed of three main parts. The anterior pituitary gland, which is represented by blue color, the median pituitary gland, which is represented by green color, and the posterior pituitary gland, which is represented by black color. So, as the name indicates, the anterior pituitary gland is present anteriorly, the median pituitary gland is present medially, and the posterior pituitary gland is present dorsally or posteriorly. So the pituitary gland is connected with the hypothalamus. Um, Up to decades, we were aware about the function of pituitary gland, but we were not aware exactly about the function of hypothalamus. We were supposing the pituitary gland is the master gland of the body, but we were not aware that there is a master of this master gland. So the master of the master gland is the hypothalamus, or the master of pituitary gland is the hypothalamus. That's why I'm talking about the hypothalamus in this slide. The hypothalamus is making the roof of the brain, while the pituitary gland work as the projection of this hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is located anteriorly and inferiorly to the thalamus. This is thalamus. So anteriorly to the thalamus there is the hypothalamus, and also inferiorly to the thalamus there is hypothalamus. You can say that the hypothalamus is below the thalamus or in front of the thalamus. So this is anteriorly and inferiorly located to the thalamus. You can also see over here a small body that is called mammillary body. We will talk about the mammillary body in another lecture. So the mammillary body is present posteriorly to the to what to the hypothalamus, and over here the midbrain is present. So in the front of the midbrain, the hypothalamus is present. You can also see over here there is a cavity over here above the hypothalamus. There is a cavity that is called third ventricle. We have talked about the third ventricle in our lecture, in our previous lecture, about the cerebrospinal fluid. So the third ventricle of the brain is located above the hypothalamus, and over here this represents the optical chiasma, where the optical nerve divides and goes or cross over to the right and left of the brain. So this optical chiasma is located inferiorly and anteriorly to the hypothalamus. So this optical chiasma is located anteriorly and inferiorly to the hypothalamus. To know about the optical chiasma, you can consult my mechanism of vision lecture. Now coming to the detail of pituitary gland. The anterior pituitary gland is also called adenohypophysis, while the posterior pituitary gland is also called neurohypophysis. The anterior pituitary gland is the part of endocrine system, while the posterior pituitary gland is a part of neural system. The posterior pituitary gland is considered as the part of the brain, while the anterior pituitary gland is considered as the part of the endocrine system. I'm going to write its name, the adenohypophysis and the neurohypophysis. Adenohypophysis represent the endocrine part of the pituitary gland, while the neurohypophysis represent the neural part of the endocrine gland. Similarly, the median pituitary gland also represent the endocrine part of the pituitary gland. Just like the anterior pituitary gland, the median pituitary gland also represent the uh, part of the endocrine part of the pituitary gland. Now coming to the detail of adenohypophysis. Adenohypophysis consists of two main parts, the lower part and the upper part. The lower part of the or the inferior part of the anterior pituitary gland is called pars distalis. Pars distalis, or distal part of the pituitary gland is called pars distalis, and the proximal part of the pituitary gland, or the proximal part of the anterior pituitary gland, is called pars tubralis. This is called pars tubralis because this is somewhat tuberous over here at the pituitary stalk. So this is somewhat tuberous. That is why this is called pars tubralis. Pars mean part. Pars mean part. So, and this is called pars distalis because this part is distal part of the pituitary gland. That is why this is called pars distalis. Similarly, the neurohypophysis also contain two parts, just like the adenohypophysis. The neurohypophysis also consists of pars nervosa. Pars nervosa is the distal part of the posterior pituitary gland, while this part of the posterior pituitary gland is called infundibulum. So infundibulum is the stalk of the uh, posterior pituitary gland. The stalk of posterior pituitary gland. This part of the brain, this part of the pituitary gland, this is called pars intermedia. Median pituitary gland is also called what? This is also called pars intermedia. Now going to the further detail, the anterior pituitary gland is supervised by the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus contain some nuclei which are responsible for the supervision of the adenohypophysis. There are four major nuclei which are present inside the hypothalamus. Then what is nuclei? Nucleus is actually the combination of cell bodies inside the white matter, the combination of cell bodies inside the brain, that is called nucleus. So there are four major nuclei which are responsible for the supervision of pituitary gland, but for the supervision of anterior pituitary gland, three nuclei are responsible. This blue one, this green one, and this red one. So the names of these nuclei can be deduced from their location, as this nucleus is present above the optical chiasma, or you can say that this is present above and superiorly and anteriorly to this optical chiasma. That is why this nucleus is called preoptic nucleus. This nucleus is called preoptic nucleus. I'm going to write their name because these are very important. Preoptic nucleus. This is called preoptic nucleus because this is present superiorly and anteriorly to the optical chiasma. That is why this is called preoptic nucleus. This nucleus is called supraoptic nucleus. Supraoptic nucleus. Supraoptic nucleus has something to do with the posterior pituitary. We will learn about in the next lecture, but I'm going to write their name. Similarly, the third nucleus, which is present over here, this nucleus is present below the third ventricle of the brain. That is why this is called paraventricular nucleus. You will no more memorize their name. You can deduce their name from their location. And similarly, this nucleus is present at the arc of the hypothalamus. This is present at the lower portion of the arc of the hypothalamus. That is why this is called arcuate nucleus. So these three, the preoptic nucleus, paraventricular nucleus, and the arcuate nucleus, is responsible for the supervision of the adenohypophysis. Now coming to the further detail. In this slide, we can see the group of endocrine cells inside the adenohypophysis. Inside the pars distalis of the adenohypophysis, the group of endocrine cells which are present, these cells are, I'm going to write their names. There is no need to write their name because that is already labeled over here. So these are very important cells, group of endocrine cells. These cells are called somatotrope. This group of cells is called somatotrope. It will be better to write their name because sometime we can so somatotropes. The next one is lactotrope. This one represents the lactotrope. This one represents the gonadotrope. This group of endocrine cells represent the thyrotropes, and this group of cells represent the corticotrope. All of these are very important. So all of these endocrine cells are called, combinedly called as chromophile, because these are color loving. These can be stained easily, and all the surrounding cells excluding these chromophile are called chromophobe, because this area of the pituitary gland cannot be stained. This area, the cells which cannot be stained, which cannot get the color, that is called chromophobe. Now to the detail. I have drawn different cells or different endocrine cells with different colors, because these two, this one, the somatotrope and the lactotrope, is supervised by the arcuate nucleus. The arcuate nucleus supervises the somatotrope and the lactotrope. The gonadotrope is supervised by this preoptic nucleus. This preoptic nucleus supervises the gonadotrope. Similarly, the paraventricular nucleus, which is present below the ventricle, below the third ventricle of the brain, this paraventricular nucleus supervises the corticotrope and the thyrotrope. How these nuclei supervise these endocrine cells, I'm going to show you. There is a portal system through which these nuclei through which these nuclei supervise these cells. This is the portal system. This is a vein, and this is the bunch of capillary, and this is another bunch of capillary. This bunch of capillary, this vein, and this bunch of capillary, this is combinedly known as hypothalamo hypophyseal portal system. Hypothalamo hypophyseal portal system. So this is called hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system because of what? Because this is present inside the hypothalamus. This connect the hypothalamus with the hypophysis. There are two bunch of capillaries over here. The superior hypophyseal bunch or superior hypophyseal bunch of capillaries and inferior hypophyseal bunch of capillaries. So these bunch of capillaries are connected with the help of a portal vein. This is hypophyseal portal vein. So this whole system is called hypothalamo hypophyseal portal system. Now, you should know about the portal system. I'm going to show you a diagram. If an arterial system is connected with the venous system with the help of capillaries, if simple capillaries connect the arterial system with the venous system, this represents the normal circulatory system. But when the arterial system is connected with the bunch of capillaries and then a portal vein and then another bunch of capillaries and then to the venous system, this represents the portal system. If the bunch of capillaries come twice inside the circulatory system, that system would be called the portal system. Once again, the normal circulatory system represents the arterial system which arise from the heart, the arterial system connected with the venous system with the help of one time bunch of capillaries. But if the arterial system is connected with the venous system with the help of portal vein and twice bunch of capillaries, then this is called portal system. Then this would be called portal system, and this would be called normal circulatory system. So the portal system which is present inside the hypothalamus and pituitary gland, that is called uh, hypothalamo hypophyseal portal system. Hypothalamo hypophyseal portal system. This is very important system because the cells or nuclei secrete some hormone or some mediators or here and there. Those mediators or those hormones are transferred through these capillaries to the second bunch of capillaries, and they're transported through the portal vein to the second or the inferior hypophyseal capillaries. So these mediators or these hormones are transferred towards the endocrine cell. I'm going to show you in detail. Over here you can see that the somatotrope is responsible for the secretion of somatotropin. The lactotrope is responsible for the secretion of prolactin. The gonadotrope is responsible for the secretion of follicle stimulating hormone and also responsible for the secretion of luteinizing hormone. Similarly, the thyrotrope is responsible for the secretion of thyroid stimulating hormone, and the corticotrope is responsible for the secretion of melanocyte stimulating hormone and adrenal corticotropic hormone. Similarly, the median pituitary gland, as I have told you in the start, that median pituitary gland is also working as the endocrine gland. So this consists of a special type of cell that is called melanotrope. So the melanotrope is responsible for the secretion of melanocyte stimulating hormone. Now I would like your deep attention in this slide. In this slide you can see that different nuclei are responsible for the secretion of different hormones, and these hormones are responsible for the supervision of different different endocrine cells. So first of all, coming towards the preoptic nucleus. This preoptic nucleus is responsible for the secretion of gonadotropic or gonadotropin releasing hormone. Gonadotropin releasing hormone. So the gonadotropic or gonadotropin releasing hormone uh, is secreted towards the this bunch of capillaries. From this bunch of capillaries, this is the primary hypophyseal capillaries. From the primary hypophyseal capillaries, this is transferred to the portal vein or hypophyseal portal vein. From the hypophyseal portal vein, this goes to the secondary hypophyseal capillaries, and from the secondary hypophyseal capillary, this gonadotropin releasing hormone will be transferred to the gonadotrope, and this will activate the gonadotrope. When it activates the gonadotrope going to secrete the follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone. So once again, the preoptic nucleus is responsible for secretion of gonadotropic releasing hormone, and this gonadotropic releasing hormone is transferred to the through the hypophyseal portal system to the gonadotrope, and this gonadotrope release the follicle stimulating hormone or luteinizing hormone. So this work as the stimulatory uh, hormone for the secretion of follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Similarly, the paraventricular nucleus is responsible for the secretion of four types of hormone: the thyrotropic releasing hormone, the thyrotropic inhibitory hormone, the corticotropic releasing hormone, and the corticotropic inhibitory hormone. The thyrotropic releasing hormone is responsible for the secretion of thyroid thyroid stimulating hormone, and this is responsible for the stimulation of thyrotrope, which secrete the thyroid stimulating hormone upon stimulation. And the thyroid or the thyrotropic inhibitory hormone is responsible for the inhibition of thyrotrope. When the thyrotrope are inhibited, the thyroid stimulating hormone will be less secreted or not secreted. Now, similarly, the corticotropic releasing hormone is secreted by the paraventricular nucleus. This is transferred to the primary hypophyseal capillaries. From the primary hypophyseal capillaries, this is transferred to the portal vein, and from the portal vein, this is transferred to the secondary hypophyseal capillaries. From the secondary hypophyseal capillaries, this is transferred to the corticotrope and stimulate the corticotrope. When this corticotropic releasing hormone stimulate the corticotrope, this secrete the adrenal corticotropic hormone. This also secrete the melanocyte stimulating hormone. Due to stimulation, when this is stimulated, this will release two types of hormone: the melanocyte stimulating hormone and the adrenal corticotropic hormone. Similarly, upon inhibition, when the corticotropic inhibitory hormone is released from the paraventricular nucleus, and this is transferred to the hypophyseal portal system, so and this inhibit the corticotrope, so the melanocyte stimulating hormone and adrenal corticotropic hormone will be not secreted or less secreted upon the secretion of inhibitory hormone. Similarly, uh, the melanocyte stimulating hormone is secreted by the by what by the median or pars intermedia or the median pituitary gland or the melanotrope, and these work upon the different condition. This is not supervised by any nucleus. The actual mechanism of secretion of melanocyte stimulating hormone is not known. Now coming toward the very important one, the very important nucleus inside the hypothalamus is the arcuate nucleus. This is present at the arc side of the hypothalamus. That is why this is, and in the shape of arc. That is why this is called arcuate nucleus. So this is responsible for the secretion of three types of hormones. One is the growth hormone releasing hormone. Growth hormone releasing hormone uh, goes through the hypophyseal portal system and stimulate the somatotrope for the release of somatotropin or growth hormone. Growth hormone is also called somatotropin. So this is stimulated by the growth hormone releasing hormone. When the growth hormone releasing hormone stimulate the somatotrope, it releases the somatotropin. Similarly, the growth hormone inhibitory hormone, this is also called somatostatin. When the somatostatin is secreted toward this this somatotrope do not secrete any somatotropin. This somatotrope is inhibited to secrete the somatotropin. Similarly, this also secrete the prolactin inhibitory hormone. The prolactin inhibitory hormone. This do not secrete the prolactin stimulatory or prolactin releasing hormone. There is no releasing hormone for the prolactin. There is only inhibitory hormone for the prolactin. So the arcuate nucleus secrete the prolactin inhibitory hormone, and this prolactin inhibitory hormone is actually dopamine. This represents the dopamine. So the dopamine is secreted, or the prolactin inhibitory hormone is secreted by the arcuate nucleus, and this go through the hypophyseal portal system, and this stimulates the lactotrope. When this prolactin inhibiting hormone comes toward the lactotrope, this inhibit the lactotrope to secrete the prolactin. The prolactin inhibiting hormone inhibit the lactotrope to secrete the prolactin. Though there is no stimulatory hormone, there is no releasing hormone from the prolactin. The prolactin will be secreted normally. This will be secreted due to external stimulus, due to various. I will talk about that later. But the prolactin will be secreted normally, but this dopamine or this prolactin inhibiting hormone will just inhibit the lactotrope to secrete the prolactin. Now coming towards the brief functions of these hormones. As I have told you in the previous slide, that somatotrope is responsible for secretion of somatotropin, lactotrope for the prolactin, gonadotrope for follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, thyrotrope for thyroid stimulating hormone, and corticotrope for adrenal corticotropic and melanocyte stimulating hormone. So the somatotropin, what is the actual function of somatotropin? Before going to the detail, you should also know that the releasing hormone and inhibitory hormone are secreted into a structure inside the hypothalamus. That structure inside the hypothalamus is called median eminence. This area is called median eminence. All the releasing and inhibitory hormone are firstly secreted into the median eminence. From the median eminence, that is transferred to the primary hypophyseal capillaries. From the primary hypophyseal capillaries, they are transferred to the secondary and then to the respective cells. Now, when the growth hormone, regulatory hormone is secreted by this nucleus, this is transferred to the somatotrope, and this somatotrope is activated. This somatotrope releases the somatotropin, and this somatotropin further goes to all tissues of the body, all the growing tissues of the body, including the major organ or major tissues are the liver tissues, the bone tissues, and the muscular tissues, and stimulate those three types of tissues, or those tissues, to secrete insulin like growth factor IGF. That is called IGF. So the IGF is secreted by the liver, by the muscles, and by the bones. And why the IGF is secreted? Insulin like growth factors. Why this is secreted? This is secreted upon the stimulation of somatotropin. When the somatotropin stimulate the muscles, the bones, and the liver, the bones, the muscle, and the liver secrete the IGF, insulin like growth factor. And insulin like growth factor is responsible for the division and the growth of all the tissues of the body. The somatotropin also carry out, or also expedite, also increase the breakdown of lipids, the breakdown of lipids into fatty acids, to consume the fatty acids for the energy, to bring about ATPs from the fats. Similarly, The somatotropin is responsible for the accumulation of protein. They make protein from amino acid, so they increase the absorption of somatotropin, increase the absorption of amino acid, to increase the absorption of amino acid, and it increase the release of fats and increase of fatty acids. It also increase the release of glucose. It also increases the release of glucose. So the glucose and fatty acid are released into the bloodstream, and the amino acid is absorbed from the bloodstream. This is for the purpose of growth, to use the glucose and fats for the for making energy, and to use the amino acid for the building blocks of the body, to make the body building. Now the prolactin is responsible for the secretion of milk. This is not responsible for the ejection of milk. Ejection is actually initiated by the oxytocin. That will we will learn about that in the posterior pituitary gland. So the secretion of milk by the mammary gland or by the mammary gland is induced by the prolactin, while the ejection of milk is initiated by the oxytocin. So combinedly, the secretion of milk plus the ejection of milk, that is combinedly known as lactation. And lactation is induced by the combination of prolactin and oxytocin. Now coming toward the follicle stimulating hormone. The follicle stimulating hormone is responsible for the development of follicles inside the ovaries. This is also responsible for the secretion of estrogen. This is also responsible for the secretion of estrogen from the ovaries, and the follicle stimulating hormone is also responsible for the synthesis and secretion of sperms inside the testes. Similarly, the luteinizing hormone is responsible for the secretion, or responsible for the ovulation, responsible for the release of ovum from the oocytes. So is responsible for ovulation. This is also responsible for the development of corpus luteum after the ovulation. And this is also responsible for the secretion of progesterone from the corpus luteum after the development of corpus luteum. And the luteinizing hormone is also responsible for the secretion of testosterone from the testes. So the follicle stimulating hormone is responsible for the secretion of sperms, while the luteinizing hormone is responsible for secretion of testosterone. The thyroid stimulating hormone is responsible for the stimulation of thyroid cells to secrete thyroxine, T3 and T4. This is also responsible for the development of follicle cells inside the thyroid gland, for the development of follicle cells inside the thyroid gland. In the high cold and pregnancy condition, when someone is going to be pregnant, during conception and during cold, the thyroid stimulating hormone is secreted in large amount. Adrenal corticotropic hormone. Now, adrenal corticotropic hormone is responsible for the secretion of hormones from the adrenal cortex, from the zona fasciculata and zona reticularis, especially the hormones which are steroids, the cortisols. And the cortisol, why the cortisol are secreted, in which condition the cortisol are secreted? The cortisol are majorly secreted when somebody is in stress. The adrenal corticotropic hormone is released when somebody is in stress. So this adrenal corticotropic hormone stimulate the zona fasciculata and zona reticularis to secrete the cortisol. So when this adrenal corticotropic hormone is stimulated or released, when somebody is in stress and somebody is having fever, somebody is having trauma, somebody is going to in some accident, etc., in some trauma situation, or some hypoglycemic situation also. So in some hyperinfection, some inflammation also, so the cortisol is secreted by the in that condition by the stimulation of adrenal corticotropic hormone. Similarly, the melanocyte stimulating hormone is the hormone which stimulate all the melanocytes inside the body to secrete the melanin. Melanin is a pigment which help in the protection against light, against the ultraviolet rays, and uh, against harmful or hazardous rays of the sunlight. So this was all about the functional anatomy of anterior pituitary gland.